Yo, what up, YouTube? It's Richawd back with another video. Man, this video just crossed my mind. I've been doing a lot of reading. I'm just, researching a lot of history. I'm reading in the Bible. I just bought a book about Egypt and a book about Rome, just to kind of, piece this whole thing together. Because like I say, it's a lot of things that I know, but it's still a lot that I have to learn and understand, you know. And the topic of this video is why so many people hate God. Me personally, I love God, but it is certain things that has happened throughout history that will make me understand why certain people hate God, or why the so-called white man has deceived the people and lied about certain things and tricked certain people, because as the story goes, there was Isaac and there was Rebecca. Rebecca was his wife. And Rebecca saw that Isaac was getting old and she needed to extend his lineage. So she wanted children. I forgot who else had kids, but she had kind of got a little jealous because she saw someone else. I forget their name. But they had kids and they was, being fruitful and all that. And she was seeing how Isaac was getting old and she didn't want his lineage to die off. So she asked the Lord and she asked Isaac for a child, right? And Isaac starts to have kids. And during that process, was known as Esau and Jacob were twins, and they were both born. But one was favored by the Lord, which was Jacob, which many people believe to be so-called the blacks, based off of how it's described. And Esau was not favored by the Lord, which is a lot of people believe Esau to be the white people. And I think it's pretty obvious when you hear about how Esau is described. He's described to have come out red and hairy, right? Now, the red part, people can argue like, oh, maybe it was just a light-skinned black person, this, that, and the third. But once they get into the hairy part, that's when it's like, oh, all right, so this had to have been a white person. You know what I'm saying? And Jacob was described to have smooth skin and, more pleasant to look on. But they were both twins, which is the irony of it. And one was favored and one was not. And basically, Jacob stole Esau's birthright because Esau was the oldest because he came out the womb first. But Esau was starving because, like I said, he wasn't favored, so he dealt with a lot of poor luck, you know what I'm saying? And he was basically starving to death. And he begged Jacob for a bowl of stew. And Jacob, in exchange for that bowl of stew, wanted Esau's birthright. And Esau, being at a desperate time, gave up his birthright. Basically, the importance of a birthright is the inheritance. It's kind of like when a family member may pass away, usually the oldest child, gets all the inheritance. Or that's how it was back then. The oldest child, the oldest boy would get all the inheritance. So basically Jacob finessed Esau, right? Jacob basically finessed Esau out of his inheritance. You know what I'm saying? For a bowl of stew. And now this is why some people may say, well, Jacob is wrong for that, this, that, and the third. But this is why, the Most High favored Jacob over Esau, because Esau was in love with earthly possessions, right? That was on his flaws. He wanted what Jacob had. He wanted to be favored. He wanted to be, you know what I'm saying, the favored child, you know what I'm saying? And Isaac, the father, he favored Esau, but the mother, Rebecca, she favored Jacob. So basically what ends up happening when Isaac gets old and he becomes blind, he feels his days are about to end. So he tells Esau to go out and hunt, because Esau was always in the field. He will hunt and bring back food. You know what I'm saying? And Jacob, he basically dwelled in the house. You know what I'm saying? So Esau was basically a field nigga, and Jacob was in the house, because he was more highly favored, So Rebecca overhears that Esau is about to get Isaac's blessing. Isaac is Rebekah's husband, Esau's father, right? Esau and Jacob's father. So she tells Jacob to go out and get some food, because basically what Isaac told Esau to do was to go out, hunt, and bring him back a dish, bring him back some meat to eat, so he can have him a good meal and fulfill his soul before, he transforms, So Rebekah hears this. She tells Jacob, and they finesse Esau out of his blessing. Here's how they do it. Jacob gets the meat before Esau comes back, right? And he goes up to Isaac and he pretends to be Esau, right? So Jacob ends up getting the blessing and he gets sent off to Laban, and gets his father's blessing to get him a wife and be fruitful and multiply. So Jacob ends up going off to Laban, having a bunch of kids, and then eventually, once he got established in Laban, he gets sent off to, build his own thing on his own. He gets sent out east, because, when he was sent to Laban, he was under somebody else's throne, So after he went there, started having children, he gets sent out east so he can branch off and be his own man. And Esau became very jealous of this. Esau wanted to unalive Jacob for what he has done, and he was always jealous of Jacob anyway. Right. So one may hear this story and you may think, why would the Most High favor one child over another child? And I can't give you the answer for that. All I can say is maybe this is some sort of punishment not maybe. I guess this is some sort of punishment for Adam and Eve biting the apple, bro. These things transpiring, right? Maybe this is why what's known as Esau, the white man, has deceived the world and now holds, the so-called blacks, and held the so-called blacks captive, and, was destroyed all type of places. It's written in history, bro. Pretty much everywhere the Europeans went, they brought plagues, they brought diseases, they brought wars, they brought all type of stuff with them, bro. I'm not saying the people of Jacob were perfect, so-called the blacks, the Israelites. But that's just a word, because Esau naturally has a lot of resentment and a lot of anger. His people have a lot of resentment and a lot of anger towards God's people, right? Because like I said, God favored the people of Jacob, even through our flaws, even through the flaws of the people of Jacob, we are highly favored, So basically what I'm getting at in this video, and I know a lot of people get mad. I see a lot of people are upset in my last video where I said, Yahweh Shai or Jesus is black. Hey, if you get mad at that, it is what it is. That's what I believe. That's what I know to believe. Everything I read points in the direction of him being black. It's certain depictions in certain books that, point to those people being so-called blacks, bro. It just is what it is. We've been lied to. Your white daddy has lied to you. He's lied to us all, to build the self-esteem of so-called white people. Because if so-called white people believed in what the Bible really taught, that they're the lesser vessel, they're less favored, less mighty, basically servants of the people of God, that would lower their self-esteem. So he has to tell them, no, like Jesus was actually white, this, that, and the third, to build their self-esteem and lower the self-esteem of the black people. It's just trickery, right? So basically where I'm getting at, a lot of people question God, and a lot of people I see, they call God evil, because it's like, why would you put certain people through this? Why would you have certain people that are less favored? But I can't give you that answer. All I will say is, we're all just not created equal. But here's the thing. Even though the Most High favored Jacob's people were righteous, right? So they still made sure that Esau was taken care of for the most part. You know what I'm saying? Like like I said, Isaac still looked out for Esau. He favored Esau for whatever reason, you know. And during those times when righteousness was in rule, you know, there was enough to go around. You know, it wasn't people just out here starving, you know. Why Esau was out here basically starving to death, I don't know why. But especially with him being in the field, like, he should have been able to go out and hunt for him some food. But for whatever reason, he was starving and begging for a bowl of stew, right? But the point being, a lot of people hate God because they're like, they hate the fact that some people are greater than others. That's really what it is. Some people are more favored than others, you know, whether it be spiritually or whatever, you know, than other people. And to some that may be evil. I'm not going to call it evil. I'm just going to call it certain things that God do that we just don't understand. You know, just like I feel like the world we living in now is just evil. And a lot of people question, like, why does God have us going through this? How long do we have to suffer? A lot of people are like, why are we suffering for an apple that we didn't bite? And hey, sometimes I wonder that. Like, why are we suffering for an apple? Where's our free, where's our, you know, opportunity to choose, right? And as the story goes, how Esau overtook the people of Jacob's nations was basically Esau saw weakness, or you may say white people, the Europeans, whatever. They saw weakness in the so-called righteous black people because we were so humble, we were so peaceful, and we took care of everybody, right? So basically they took over by deceiving us because we gave them the benefit of the doubt because, oh, evil can't exist, right? They can't be that bad, right? That's how they ended up overtaking our people and you know what I'm saying, overtaking our kingdoms. And this is why they mimic a lot of what we do, but they corrupt it because they don't have an original culture, right? Everything you see today is just a mimic of so-called God's people. Even when you see these demonic oaths and all that, they speak of oaths in the Bible. Righteous people, they did oaths, you know. So all Satan did was steal our culture and corrupt it because they don't have a culture. And one may wonder what type of God would give a people, you put some people in the world with no culture. That seems evil to some people. And I can understand how you would feel that way. I ain't gonna cap. If I was white, I'd be tight, like, word. Like, what you mean I'm less favored? You know what I'm saying? What you mean I'm not as great as these people? Like, what you mean my skin gonna peel if I'm in the sun? Like, what's going on, bro? You know? But I'm still learning a lot. It's still things I gotta figure out. You know, I've been going through rereading the Bible, you know, reading it thoroughly, you know, because I've read portions through it when I was younger, but now I have more of a mature mind and, you know, it's going to stick with me more, you know, and I've never like fully, completely finished. So now I'm just going through the process of, I'm trying to spend, like, today I probably read it for like 3 hours this morning, you know, 2-3 hours, you know, so I'm trying to every day, like 2-3 hours, you know, read the Bible until I've read it in full. And then once I've completely finished reading the Bible, I'm going to read up on these history books about Rome, about Egypt, about Greece. I want to learn about all that shit, and I want to, like, piece it together, you know. But yeah, that's why a lot of people hate God, bro, because we're not all equal. That's why they're pushing this delusion of equality, but there's never been and there will never be equality, you know. And that's kind of sad. It is. It's kind of sad to know that you're inferior to some other people. But that's why they say you got to value the spiritual more than the flesh, right? You got to value spiritual things more than fleshly things. Yeah, somebody in the flesh may look more desirable than you, you know, may have better aesthetics and better traits than you. But maybe spiritually you're more grounded than that person, or maybe y'all just as grounded. But at least if you're spiritually grounded, you shouldn't be concerned or swayed by these earthly things, you know. And that's why they say the Most High didn't favor Esau, because Esau was in favor of earthly things, you know, while Jacob was more in favor of spiritual things. You understand? I don't know why it's this way. I don't know why the Lord made it this way. I don't know why we're suffering right now. You know, I understand the white man's hatred towards so-called blacks. If you read up on the Bible, you will understand why. They've had resentment and hatred towards the blacks since the biblical times, right? Because we were clearly better and more favored than them, right? So that's why we've always been a target and something that they've tried to overtake and destroy, and enslave. And you see it now. They've taken us away from our culture. Majority of our women don't wear their real hair. Majority of the men out here, thugging and doing all type of stuff. We're at a lower state. We're at a lower frequency. The food, everything is lower in our state, bringing us out of our natural godlike state, because they know when we're tapped into our godlike state, they can't compete. So they got to lower us down to their sort of animalistic level. Like, as it says, Esau was outside in the field like an animal, basically, But yeah, man, that's my take on the video. For all those who are upset with my whole take on things, my whole spiritual beliefs, this is just what I've learned and what I believe. It's a lot of information behind the things I say. I don't just say them because I'm racist or I'm whatever. One may say God is racist, right? God favors so-called blacks over whites. It just is what it is. Same way the white man is racist. He favors his people. He favors white people over black people. So he gonna tell that lie. He gonna tell you Caesar Borgia, I believe. Look it up. It's Caesar Borgia, I believe. Bogia, I believe, something like that. He looks just like who they depict Jesus to be. You will look it up and they'll have images and comparisons. Look up Black Jesus, right? You will have it'll probably, the first thing you'll probably see is some dude with some perm. We know black people don't have perms. So clearly that's not, like, all them dudes who portray Black Jesus and wore a perm, bro. You're a disgrace, bro. You're a sellout. Like, ain't no amount of money gonna have me goddamn wearing a perm. You feel me? But even when you look up Black Jesus, it's gonna be some BS where they show like the black TV shows or the black movies with black people with a perm. But then there will be a depiction of Jesus with dreadlocks and a beard. Right? That's where a lot of people get this from. And I feel like where there's smoke, there's fire. But that's the video for today, man. That's just where I stand on things. That's just what I believe. You can get mad at me, whatever. It just is what it is, bro. If you believe Jesus is white, if you think I'm racist because I believe Jesus is black, it is what it is, bro. I'm just going off of things biblically. The Bible will tell you that. History will tell you that. Not even just the Bible. It's books in history that depict the so-called people of God, the people of the biblical times, the Israelites. They depict them as people with a darker complexion, bro. That's a fact. But if you don't believe that, you just believe in the white lie, and that's okay. Hey, if I was white, I'll probably lie to my kids too. You feel me? If I was white, I'd probably lie to my kids too, man. Because what the hell? What you gonna tell your kids? Yeah, you're inferior to those people. They more athletic. They more spiritually gifted. Everything is better. The only reason why they struggle so much in schools is because we don't give them as many resources in the hood. We poison their foods. We put liquor stores at every corner. And you go in the suburbs and you go in white neighborhoods, it's more structured. That's why they have better grades. It's not because we're smarter. It's because we've created a better structure for us. Right? But if you're white, you're not going to tell your kids that. You're going to tell them you're smarter, you're better. Yeah, those black people, they're animals, so they're more athletic, but we're smarter. But really, we're better in every area, bro. And I know that may sound racist, but it is what it is. In every single area, spiritually, physically, all that. When we're tapped in, our ceiling is higher than their ceiling. Why did God make it that way? I don't know. But all I can say is it's good to be black.